NHS could save £40 million a year if more women breastfed their babies for longer. That's according to a report by Unicef. The charity says 81% of British mothers start breastfeeding when their baby is born, but by 6 weeks, only 48% have carried on. And by 6 months, only a quarter are still persevering. The Unicef report puts figures on the health benefits if women breastfeed for 4 months. For example, around 21,000 fewer children would have ear infections, and that would save the NHS £750,000 a year. And there would be about 50,000 fewer doctor's appointments, saving the health service £40 million a year. Well, earlier, Ros Taylor came into the studio with her newborn baby son. She breastfeeds him and also her 3-year-old daughter, Isla. And in fact, she fed 3-week-old Hugh during the interview. I began by asking her why she'd decided to breastfeed.
Well, I knew it was the best thing health-wise, and it just felt like the natural thing to do as well. Fortunately, it worked out very well for me, and I had a little bit of pain at the beginning, as a lot of people do, but that passed quite quickly. And then I carried on because it was the easiest thing to do, and also my first daughter was very healthy and didn't seem to suffer from any infections.
And Hugh's happily feeding there. I mean, you're making it look really easy. Do you think women are under too much pressure now to breastfeed? And if they want to use the bottle, they should be able to.
I think if they really want to use a bottle, they should certainly be able to. I think it's great if everyone can give it a go and get the support they need, because the problem is that we don't really see many people breastfeeding. A lot of mothers, our mother's generation, didn't breastfeed because breastfeeding rates were at a historic low in the 70s. So we don't have an idea of what it's like, of kind of hands-on advice. Nobody talks about it except women who do it and other people who have a bit of an opinion without knowing much about it.
Why do you think some women are embarrassed about feeding in public?
Because the culture in Britain, when you see a breast, is to assume it's there for a sexual reason. It takes a while to sort things out, to try and do it discreetly. There's a feeling that you're kind of making a spectacle of yourself and getting your tits out, and it's not like that. It's just, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. But as I say, in Britain, when you've got page 3, when you've got a culture of the breast as a sexual thing, which is nothing wrong with that, but only as a sexual thing, that's the problem.
Ros Taylor talking to Kathy earlier. Well, I'm joined now from Leeds by Professor Mary Renfrew, the lead author of the Unicef report, and Dr Ellie Lee, who's director of the Centre for Parenting Culture Studies at the University of Kent. What is the main error you believe Professor Renfrew has made?
Well, I think there's lots of things that you could say about specifics in the report and the way health issues are posed. But my main objection to it is that it's a phenomenally one-sided, unbalanced representation of the issues. So even if you take things where, as far as I understand it, you could make a point about evidence. If you have lots of children and you breastfeed them for a very long time, you're probably less likely to get breast cancer. For most mums and dads, having babies and looking after them isn't an anti-cancer strategy. You know, what they're doing is having kids and raising them, and what they have to address is the pragmatic issues that poses for people. And for most people, that includes quite legitimately bottle feeding their babies, and it's become heresy, but I actually think bottle feeding is completely fine if it helps you bring up your kids and makes life easier. There's nothing wrong with it.
Professor Renfrew, what do you say to that?
Well, actually, one of the reasons for doing this report is that we were very worried about women not getting enough support. We know that women want to breastfeed, as you said earlier on, 81% are starting, but a lot are stopping. And in that stopping, a lot of them get upset and worried about their babies. We think that's wrong. We'd like better services and better support for women to help them to continue. And what we've shown in this report, with a very rigorous analysis of the evidence, particularly in a UK setting, is that actually to put those services in place in the NHS would save money as well as helping women.
Well, you see, I mean, a lot of the breastfeeding science internationally is caught up with what's going on in the developing world. Is there the same imperative in Britain as there is in Africa to breastfeed your baby exclusively for 6 months or a year?
The balance of risks is very different in different settings, absolutely. And in a setting like Africa, then it's a life or death issue to choose to breastfeed or not to breastfeed, and many women don't have that choice. In the UK, it's still a very, very important issue, and it's important for women to know that it's an issue, but it's much more important, we're saying in this report, for the health services and indeed for society in general to understand that it's an important issue, to support women to choose to breastfeed. At the moment, women can choose to bottle feed. In fact, they can choose to try to breastfeed, but without services, they can't necessarily continue to
Ellie
do
Lee,
that.
is this what you feel is a pressure on British women that isn't justified?
I think there's phenomenal pressure. It's become completely one-sided. I mean, a lot of what's going on now is really moral crusading dressed up as evidence. And I think that the truth of the matter is it may be the case that for some women they stop breastfeeding earlier than they'd like because they weren't given enough support.
But you're not saying Professor Renfrew's on a moral crusade, are you? I mean,
I think, as it happens, that is my characterisation of a lot of what's going on with a lot of these breastfeeding campaigns. Yes, I think it's a moral crusade dressed up as evidence, and it is completely one-sided, which only ever attaches benefits to breastfeeding and negative ideas to bottle feeding. And the thing is, I'm all for women getting the support they need, but loads of women, the reason why they give their babies a bottle isn't because they were unsupported, it's because it helps them sort out problems.
Okay, Professor
and it has
Renfrew,
become almost heretical to say
I must let her answer that.
it's okay to formula feed.
Professor Renfrew, you're on a moral crusade.
Certainly not a moral crusade or anything like. This is a major public health issue with very, very important health consequences for mothers and for babies across the country. And it's important that the health services and the government and society in general pick that up. In our report, we make it very clear that all women need support regardless of how they breastfeed, regardless of how they feed, whether they're bottle feeding or breastfeeding. And we're making that very clear.
Okay.
We're not criticising anybody. We're saying that women need support in the UK, which is a culture that's very antagonistic to breastfeeding at the moment, and we need to counter that with good quality services.
We must leave it there. I hope you'll both come back and discuss this some more another time. Thank you both very much indeed.